Hi, hello, and welcome to LearnStroke IAS classes by Arjun. You're with me, Arjun R. Shankar, and we are discussing the editorial analysis, the editorial summary from the newspaper so that it will be very easy for you for the current affairs for 2024 examination. So I think we can quickly move on to the first important topics of the day. And to quickly start on, we can quickly begin by Vendetta Unlimited. Again, reviving a 13-year-old case against Arundhati Roy is actually smacking a lot of intolerance in these days. So this you can actually mark it as GS paper 2 as polity, or in the context of law, governance, etc. You can actually mark this article regarding that. So altogether you can see that the criminal case goes back in 2010 against the writer activist, the Booker Prize winner Arundhati Roy, and an academician from Kashmir. So whatever in back in 2010, both of them had made a statement on Kashmir. Both of them had made a statement on Kashmir, and now in 2023, the statement that they said in 2010 is taken into account, and they are going to be charged on that. So, what are the legal provisions for that? It's very clear to understand that certain things that you see, even after 10 years, the important legal question that is coming here is, even after 10 years, can you charge it? What is the legal thing regarding this? This is something that we need to be finding in this. So quickly move on, apply the IAS filter, and let's get the most important points here right away. So these are the case facts. So the Delhi Lieutenant Governor has sanctioned prosecution. So that has sanctioned prosecution for novelist Arundhati Roy and former international law professor in Central University of Kashmir, Professor Sheikh Shaukat Hussain, regard to a case relating to their comments that they have made a comments in 2010. So this is the basic case fact that you have to understand. And what was the FIR was actually filed, and it was actually filed. Matter was registered following the Court of Metropolitan Magistrate, New Delhi, and the case was also registered under UAPA, or Unlawful Activities Prevention Act 1967. So people who do not know about this act, please do know about this act. It's very important for prelims and mains. You should know what are the provisions of UAPA. So it's good that you know this. And also 153A, 153B, and 505 of IPC for their speeches at public function in the national capital. So whatever they said something about Kashmir. So whatever they have said about Kashmir, it is actually being questioned right now. So this is the basic case fact that you have to know. And you can say the important points. The government stand. The government at the time did not want to pursue the case against the speakers, as they were very engaged in efforts to find a political solution to Kashmir. So in 2010, everybody was busy talking about the Kashmir issue. The government did not file a case against Arundhati Roy at that time. Then how can they file it this time is the next question. So sedition charges. The lieutenant governors approved prosecution for other offense, but it did not charge sedition. This is a very, very serious thing that you can see right from the British history. You can see that Indians were often charged with sedition. So if you do not know the sedition law, I think I strongly suggest that you find out sedition law in India, and what is the ground for sedition. In what ground, on what ground will you be arrested on sedition? So find out that. But sedition was not applied in the Arundhati Roy's case because Supreme Court has barred proceedings with sedition charges. So since a Supreme Court bar is there, they do not charge a sedition. And they also charge section 13 of the UAPA. And since charging UAPA may also be difficult, because you need to get the central government sanction for that. And again, getting a central government sanction is also time taking. And what is the concept of statute of limitation? This is the key important point that we have to discuss. So the article raised the question of whether prosecutor is barred by statute of limitation, as the Code of CR, the Criminal Procedure Code, sets a 3-year limitation for offences carrying up to 3-year imprisonment. I'll explain this more easily, because in this context you should know what do you mean by the statute of limitation. So imagine that, say, I'll draw my pedestrian diagrams that you will. A has committed a crime. Say this person A has committed a crime, and what happens is you can actually charge it. You can actually charge it and punish it. So what happens is the statute of limitation is simply the time frame. Say imagine that this was in 2020. So this was in 2023. So the question is, statute of limitation is this time that I'm trying to draw in this picture. A has committed a crime. So you can actually charge A until 2023. That means on the basis of the punishment, on the basis of that means imagine that 3 years is the statute of limitation here. So within 2020 you can charge him, 21 you can charge him, 22 you can charge him, 23 you can charge him, but after this point in 2024 you cannot charge him because the statute of limitation in certain cases is not allowing that, because 3 years was according to this, the crime that A committed, it was 3 year. You should actually charge him by 2023 and not by 2024. So this thing is called, and in this case you will see that the thing happened in 2010, and now in 2023 the editorial really asks us, don't you think we have exceeded the statute of limitation, because it is just 3 years. You can see, for a imprisonment of 3 years, if you are getting an imprisonment for 3 years, the statute of limitation according to the CRPC is 3 year limitation. It's got a 3 year. If it is a 3 year crime, it is 3 year. So then how can you actually do it in 2023 after 13 years is the next important question that you have to understand. I hope you got this idea. So what is statute of limitation? You should know it from an interesting perspective, because you can use it somewhere. Is a law that sets maximum amount of time that parties involved in a dispute have to initiate legal proceedings from the date of an alleged offense, whether civil or criminal. So it is applicable to both civil and criminal law. So it is a maximum amount of time. I think you will remember this picture. So this is a maximum amount of time. You cannot charge it beyond that. The length of the time the statute allows for a victim to bring legal actions against the suspected wrongdoer can be vary based on the jurisdiction and nature of the offense. So it bases basically on the based on jurisdiction and even the nature of the offense. So this is an important concept, the statute of limitation. So please have an idea regarding that. And yes, now we'll quickly move on to the important other article, GS paper 2, international relationship. And definitely, since the Gaza Israel war and conflict is going on, I think these days definitely a lot of news comes regarding different perspectives. See, you actually get a 360-degree perspective. You actually get a 360-degree perspective where you can see that you can clearly see these points that some people are great sympathizers of Israel. They believe that Israel is doing right, and the other people believe that no, they stand with the Arab people because Israel is doing bad things. Israel is the villain. And some people believe that there needs to be a UN intervention or an international solution for this. So basically you can see that some people support the Palestinian people, some people support Hamas, and some people support Israel. So what happens is you have different viewpoints. So it's important to see the dispute and understand what is your solution, what is your viewpoint on that. So let's understand this editorial from this authors. You can understand the perspective of this author, and let's see what are his views. Let's apply the IAS filter. And here we go. The article talks about CNN's coverage bias. So the issue was actually, its issue is getting covered by CNN, one of the most important medias around the world. But what happens is the Israel-Hamas war and the coverage of CNN, they say that it's heavily influenced by American liberal perspectives. That is another important perspectives, which tend to focus on feel-good morality without introspection. It just talks about morality. So it's more influenced by the American. Definitely, CNN's it's more influenced by the American. But when you take the European perspective, you can see that it is less one-sided. The European view coverage of the Israel-Hamas battle or the conflict is less one-sided. That means it's better than CNN, because countries like France, you can see that there is a sympathy for Palestinian cause. And even some of the Hamas actions are being discussed. So there is a sympathy in France for the Hamas, so the Palestinian cause. So again, this is all depending upon how you perceive it. Again, the root cause of the conflict, you know that very well, but still, the articles say that it is the Israeli settlements and aggressive settled behavior. You can definitely know that even in the places like West Bank or even in Gaza, you can see that the areas where Palestinian people are there, Israel has huge number of settlements in these areas also. So in turn, what happens is this has created a lot of tensions. So this is one view. And moving on to the another one is questioning the war's effectiveness. See, whether Israel started it or Hamas started it, the editorial clearly say that it will only harm the Palestinian cause. It is not going to, play a big time role for Israeli people, but it is going to come out as a really bad for the Palestinian people. So that is one questioning the and difference between Palestine Liberation Organization. You should know that PLO is very important. You can also watch our explain wala in LearnStroke. There is a video on Israel Palestine issue. So I've clearly mentioned about the history of Palestine Liberation Organization of Yasser Arafat, and you know that how after PLO Hamas came into the picture. So it highlights that PLO's historical secular struggle. So the articles say that PLO's approach was much more secular, and Hamas's more got religious dimension. So you can see that PLO on the one side and Hamas on the other side. The editorial say that PLO was more secular, and Hamas had more religious dimension. And that is the reason why when Hamas is actually acting on the religious bias, religious context, it is actually affecting the other Muslims around the world also. So that is also one thing that they are trying to explain. And what is the concept of political Islam? The impact of political Islam. So political Islam is often associated with religion. That means the movements or the politics that is completely associated with religion. So you can see that there are two important group of people. When you compare it even with the Muslims, you can see that there is two important groups that are being formed according to the editorial. One is people who do not believe in violence. The large section of the people around the world, people or who do not believe in violence, and the other people who believe in political Islam. That means they use politics with Islam. So the marginalized Muslims who do not agree with extreme versions of religious fundamentalism. So I think in around the world you can see a large majority, but you can see that they are actually a marginalized section in Israel or even Palestine, where you see that they do not want the extreme violence, etc. And definitely the editorial clearly say that it is a big time Hamas blunder, because it is reflecting a misunderstanding of the current global trends in Muslim societies. So Hamas actions, especially when it has religious context, is actually sending a wrong message to the Muslim community around the world. So it's a big blunder that Hamas is doing, is what the editorial clearly says. And let's take two important questions. What are the underlying factors that led to the Israel-Hamas conflict? How will this conflict impact the Palestinian cause? This is one important article, important area. What is the distinction between the historical actions of PLO and Hamas? And how does this distinction influence the global perception of their action? So two important questions. You can find the answers to that. Let's quickly move on to the other important. Now we have two back-to-back articles coming. Two articles back-to-back coming on the issue of caste census. So let me also be very clear. Now the next two articles are going to focus on the issue of caste census, whether it is good or bad. Again, as I told you, there is a 360-degree perspective. You can see that at one point, let's clearly understand, on the one side, there are people who support the caste census. Simply caste census means in Bihar actually they're trying to take it. So while you do this, you clearly get an idea that how many SC/ST, see, out of this whole population, out of the 100% population, how much is the percentage of SC/ST? How much is the percentage of OBC? How much is the percentage of economically weaker sections and other important castes? So you get a caste-wise data on which are the castes that are actually lagging behind, and what is the financial status, and what is the economic and social status of all this. And some people, they support this caste census because they say that only if you get the caste data, we can help them. Without getting the proper data or the proper caste census, like how many people, like say x million people are in SC community, or 2 million people, imagine that they are in OBC community. Without knowing this, how can you get the support, how can you help them without the data? So one people support it because they believe it's good data, but on the other hand, some people are against it because they still believe that this data that they have will again create more rift in the castes. You are an OBC, that means you are subcaste in OBC. So when the data is out, what happens is the stigma relating to the caste system is even more increasing. So this is the two important positions that you can take. What is your position in that? What is your opinion on the caste census? Is it good to have this? See, as civil service aspirants, you should have this idea in your mind. You should be thinking in this perspective. What is your opinion? Do you support it? There are two important views on that. I know just two articles are coming back to back. That is why I explained it completely. So let's apply the IAS filter and take the most important points. Let's quickly go on to that. And what is the significance of caste-based census? Let's say that caste-based census would provide accurate data on the distribution of socio-economic status of different caste and communities in India. So this is the supporting thing. You will get the proper data. It completely revolves around the thing called data. And the policy formulation and targeted intervention, which means when you get accurate data, what happens is evidence-based policy development and targeted programs to do what? To uplift the marginalized groups will be actually happening. So what is it? Only when you have data, accurate data will be having a better target. You can create more programs, create more evidence-based policies exclusively for these people. So do you agree with this as something that you have to discuss? And next is evaluation of social justice program. When you have a regular caste-based data helps in evaluating the effectiveness and policies or programs at social justice. So imagine that this is the concept. This is a caste. So imagine that this is the STs, this is the SCs. So when you have the data, you can actually measure the development that is being going here. Say 2 million SCs can be found in this region, and out of that you get a statistical report that say out of the 2 million people, you see that more than 1 million people have not received anything. That means you can come to a conclusion that 50% of the SC community in that area are not getting the benefits of development. So all this data will actually help them to arrive at such analysis. So data is very important is what they say. And the next important move is regarding fair representation and accountability. If you have the caste-based data, you can have fair representation of marginalized communities in where? Government, education, and even employment. With the data, you can actually make sure that fair people, in the sense, fair representation is given. That is something that you have to see. And addressing caste discrimination. So next few things, definitely, it talks about government intervention. What do you mean by government intervention? It simply means that government should intervene and government should support. So if you have the data, you should know that the caste discrimination is deeply rooted. It's actually in the minds, very deep, and government intervention is necessary to rectify historical injustice. Only if it is a caste system happening here, you have the caste system like the old system. There's a lower caste, upper caste people. There's discrimination. So what happens is only with the government intervention you can solve this problem. So that is one important thing. And social cohesion, having a whole unit, completely holding it together in the whole unit. Discrimination based on caste hinders social cohesion. So if you have discrimination in caste, the social cohesion or society as a whole will never function, and there will be no unity. Without that, there will be no unity and no harmony. So government intervention is very important in all this regards, is the important aspect. And even economic development and education. So when you have caste discrimination, it leads to economic disparities and limits access to education also. And the government intervention is very important. So it talks about government intervention now. Government should intervene. So let's put G. Government should intervene and make sure that economic development and education goes to all, irrespective of caste. And again, at this point, you can see G is applied, government intervention, to get employment and political representation. Even for job opportunities, political representation, to participate in elections, government intervention is required to create more anti-discriminatory law. you should cut down discrimination. So what you need to create more laws in which you can actually avoid discrimination on the basis of caste. So awareness and legal frameworks. So government intervention is again important to create the awareness and to create anti-discrimination laws, to create awareness through education programs, legal enforcement. So definitely you can say government intervention is very, very important in this regard. And in this, what is your thought process relating to this? What is your thought? Do you support the caste census or what? Let's take three important questions. Why is a caste-based census in India considered important, and how can it aid evidence-based policy formulation and targeted intervention? This is a very tricky question. Find the answer to this. What are the key reasons for government intervention in addressing caste discrimination in India? How do they relate to historical injustice, human rights, and social cohesion? Again, find the answer to this. Next is, how can a caste-based census help promote transparency, accountability, and fair resource distribution while addressing issues relating to representation, education, and employment in India? So how can the caste-based census help in promoting transparency, accountability, fair resource distribution, while education and employment also? So while you write the mains answer, I think you know that you actually check the pedal points. That means, to write this answer, you need to mention this transparency, accountability, distribution, and representation, education, employment. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That means your mains answer should definitely address these 6 issues. So that is very important that we have to know. So that is regarding the one important article regarding. And the second article again, should the 50% of legal ceiling on reservation be considered? This is also important from the perspective of caste reservation. So GS paper 1 and GS paper 2 from the perspective of caste, society, government intervention. So paper 1 and 2 very important. Find an answer to all this. So let's apply the IAS filter and check out the important points. So you know that there is already a 50% reservation ceiling under scrutiny. So if there are 100 seats in India, whether it is the civil service exam, UPSC, or any other exam, you know that 50% of the quota is most open. Generally, it's open to the general candidates, and the 50% is actually reserved in India for SC, ST, OBC, other marginalized sections. So you have different. So 50-50 reservation is actually not almost 50-50 is there. And the release of Bihar's caste survey data has sparked a debate. You know why? Whether the 50% legal ceiling on caste-based reservation set by Supreme Court in 1992 should be reconsidered again. So having this 50% reservation as passed in 1992 Supreme Court order. So now in 2023, right now after the caste census, should we have 50? Is there a need to have 50% reservation? Is the number one question. So that, what is your opinion on that? And let's see the historical context. So the 50% ceiling was actually somewhat arbitrarily set by the judiciary. This is the view of the editorial, and it say that the 50% random number was actually a number that the judiciary arbitrarily, almost on a rounding basis, they set up this number 50% is what the editorial is saying. However, you can see that certain states like Tamil Nadu have already breached this limit. In Tamil Nadu, you can see that 50% is mandatory, but some states you can see they're giving 50% reservation or even 60% of the reservation. So they are breaching this limit of 50%. So additionally, the 10% reservation of the EWS or the economic weaker section introduced by the central government has pushed the limit further. So it's not only Tamil Nadu. We already have a 50%, but when you add this SC, ST, OBC and also plus you can even add the EWS. So this limit of reservation, limit of reservation is pushing further. Is it good or is it bad? Does the society need that? It's all something that you also need to have a solution for that. Have an idea in your mind also. And let's, what about the challenge of class classification? Because it is actually regarding the caste census, it is one important point. The classification of OBC is heterogeneous and certain, you say that OBC, when you say OBC, there are many other subcasts involved in this. There are so many. In India, you have thousands of subcasts. That is our pluralism and our diversity. So OBC, they say that certain landed and locally dominant OBC communities tend to benefit more from reservation. So you say that, say imagine these two are the important OBC section, that are getting more benefits from reservation, but whereas this and this, they are not getting other benefits. So simply by saying OBC doesn't mean that they're all getting benefits. So one of the important thing is the editorial say that you need to have sub categorization of the communities to ensure fair representation. So you need to sub categorize even OBC. Then that means bring this to light, bring this to light, this to light, this to light, and even other small caste under the OBC, they have to be brought. And the potential impact of socioeconomic data. So the release of socioeconomic data may lead to demand of this can, when you have caste census, one other important factor is reconfiguration of caste categories, particularly within the OBC. So the OBC is being socially and economically backward, but conceptual jurisprudential thinking is needed to define this category accurately. So you can check this. Just because you see that you are socially economically backward OBC, you need to reconfigure this whole definition of OBC and the people coming under this. So one talks about subcategorization, redefinition of the reconfiguration of OBC, and another is the challenge of caste classification. Demands for separate reservation by individual caste group based on the population will actually come. So it is another important thing that new caste reservation things, new demands will come from the other caste groups. There are other caste groups involved in this. So what happens is they will raise another, not only OBC, there are so many castes, they will all raise their demands for reservation. And concerns for further caste fragmentation, you can say. Some people believe that the caste census is completely accentuating caste identity and fragmenting the polity. It will again, stigmatize the Indian society basis on the caste. So on simply by getting data, the caste issue can even be worsened. So what is we have discussed the two important articles, and what is your thought process on this? So let's take two questions. What challenges and consideration are associated with subcategorizing OBC within the caste-based reservation system? How might this impact the political landscape? Good question and important to know. How does the release of Bihar's caste survey data reopen the debate of 50% reservation ceiling set by the Supreme Court? And what are the historical and legal factors contributing to this debate? So find out the answers. And moving on to the last important editorial of the day, a message from Ladakh. So this is very important from GS paper 1, Indian geography, Indian culture, and even from GS paper 2, governance issue. So it talks about Kargil, Ladakh, and the important area. So it's very important from GS paper 1 perspective. Know where is Leh Ladakh located in the map of India? Where is the Leh Ladakh located? Where is Kargil located? And even it talks about a place called Dras. Where is Dras located? And what are the neighboring places relating to this? So located in the map and have a close idea about these places. So that is a small thing that I'm asking all of you to do. And let's apply the IAS filter. And it talks about the most important one. It talks about the Ladakh's complex politics. The article says, Ladakh is as complex as the topography. Ladakh is a very complicated topography with a lot of mountains, ranges. So even the political landscape is as complex as the topography, with, you can say, different layers of religious, cultural, and linguistic identities in Ladakh. And you can see that at one time, you can see Leh were a Buddhist majority district, and even Kargil, you can see it's a Muslim majority district. So having different religious, cultural, and linguistic minorities is important. And let's see the demographic insights. So it's actually a vast, covering an area of 40 times the size of Delhi. You can say, what about when you say demography, what about the population? Delhi, you can say that this is the small density of population, you can say. It's so packed. It's so packed that it's densely packed. People who are living in 1 square kilometer, you can say, so densely packed in Delhi. And in the same place, you can say that in Kargil or in Ladakh, you can say that just people are scatteredly living inside this. So there is a more natural areas, and it's very scattered. So it has a small population of 2.74 lakh. And the recent elections to LAHDCK, that means what is LAHDCK? Ladakh Autonomous Hill Development Council of Kargil. So please find out what is LAHDCK. From Polity Basics for Prelims, please find out what is LAHDC and what do you mean by Autonomous Hill Development Councils. What are the autonomous hill development councils? Are there any other thing in India? Please find out. And recently, you can say that the National Conference has won majority of seats in the Hill Development Council election. And also, you can say that the strong Kashmiri influence. So, definitely, Ladakh has got a strong Kashmiri influence, and you know that J&K again was a big J&K was again completely split, and now you can say Jammu and Kashmir and Ladakh they have all separated. We have actually separated this, but a lot of people do not support the separation. They made it union territory, do not support this. Many in Kargil have deep-rooted connections with Kashmir. So they say we have a deep-rooted connection in Kashmir, where you can say Kashmir teachers once ran schools in Dras and Kashmir. So you have a big-time relationship between Kashmir and the common architectural, food, everything is actually something relating to Kashmir. So we have a common culture. And the religious seminaries influence. These are the top two political people who have a big time influence for that. So you can see that it's shaped by two important agency organization like Imam Khomeini Memorial Trust, the IKMT, and the ISK, the Islamia School of Kargil. These institutions oppose the separation of Kargil. So you can say that there was one Jammu and Kashmir. You can say J&K was completely separated now. You have Ladakh completely carved on a different scale now. So both these seminaries have very influence in the Ladakhi politics. So they have opposed this. And also you can say identity-based politics. So voters in Kargil often express their opposition to the separation of Kashmir and emphasizing the deep ties and shared identity. So always understand that people in Leh Ladakh, they actually completely take their culture, identity, everything they are related to Kashmir. So a mere separation of Ladakh to Kashmir is not a good thing. Even the young voters in Kargil, they believe that they do not like the separation concept. So I think let's take one important question. What are the complexities of Ladakh's political landscape, and how do religious, cultural, and linguistic identity shape the region's politics? So number one that talks about complexity, then talks about religious, cultural, and linguistic identity shaping the region's politics. So I think that is the most important thing, and we have come to the end of the class. And do subscribe to our channel LearnStroke IAS classes by Arjun, and listen to all the current affairs classes. Share it with your UPSC sharing friends, and let's crack prelims 2024.